Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I'm here this beautiful Monday morning with David, and we are doing our first ever Q&A episode. We've been fielding questions from social media. People have sent in emails, wrote to us on our website, and we have curated, there were even questions we got from the same question from multiple people. So we're definitely going to hit those, but you can continue to send your questions in because we have another Q&A episode coming up in a couple months. You're also welcome to share your questions in the chat if you're watching live online. But we're doing this because there is this opening during this week. Obviously, it happens more than once a year, where the cosmos really is giving us answers, is supporting us to better understand, to deepen our understanding, to go to the source. And we thought it would be a great opportunity not only to help our listeners learn more, take their understanding deeper, but also give you as our listeners the opportunity to ask questions that you think other people would also benefit from. And so we hope to give you a wide array of different topics and understandings, and we'll continue the conversation, like I said before, in a couple months. Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where David and I, and sometimes our guests, provide our listeners with the most powerful and practical tools to navigate the coming 7 days through gleaning through the wisdom of Kabbalah and its teachings, its writings, also from our personal experience in working with students who are applying this wisdom, this knowledge to their lives on a daily basis. And that's really where the beginning of this conversation is a lot of our listeners that wrote in about conflicts. We learned this, but we also learned that. You've said this, David, but you also say that. So I'm going to just dive right in with some of, there's so many different...
Is that one of the questions, or is that...
Well, one of the questions that I thought was really made me smile is, on one hand, we learn, we teach, we talk about it on the Weekly Energy Boost probably every week. The universe is good. It has our back. The Creator is a positive force. There is only good. Everything that's happening for us, no matter how bleak it looks, is for our highest good. And yet, Kabbalah also prescribes tools for protection. Kabbalah also says there are things that we need to do to bless what we have, to protect what we have, to ensure that we keep our blessings. So if everything is all good and everything comes from the Creator, why do we need tools for protection?
Okay, that's a good question. I would say that first off, when we say that everything is all good and that the Creator supervises our lives, we have to understand what that means. The supervision of the Creator is to ensure that we create the proper vessel to be able to receive fulfillment. The lack of fulfillment is not because the Creator is lacking something or the quality of the light is degraded in any way. The light never changes, has never changed. The light is always the same light since the time of creation. It's the quality of the vessel that doesn't allow the light to be revealed in a way that we call fulfillment. So when the Creator is supervising our process and our journey, what that means is that every nanosecond, the Creator or the universe, however you want to put it, has to readjust and realign its approach to us based on our consciousness to help us grow into the perfect vessel. If I'm going to be stubborn and not transform or let go of some aspect of negativity, which is like a virus to my soul, I'm not going to let it go, then the universe has to adjust and create a whole new plan for me in how to cleanse me of that, have me let that go so that I can have the pure vessel to be able to hold the fulfillment. Everything is from the lens of how do I make this person have long-term fulfillment? So that's what we need to understand. The Creator is looking at us and saying, how do I give this person everything? Because right now, they're settling for less. So I'm not able to reveal myself completely. So when we talk about things for protection, or we talk about prayer or blessings, That's not because I need to convince the light to treat me differently. The light's always treating me the same. That's never changing. The light is just trying to be part of my life. Every tool that we prescribe, that the sages prescribe on the path of Kabbalah, is because that tool transforms the vessel. So for example, last night in Kabbalah 1, someone had shared that what was profound for them and what worked for them is the tool of speaking out loud to the Creator versus he would always pray or internally in his mind, right? So a lot of us, we speak to the Creator maybe in our mind, we pray in our mind, and Kabbalistically that stays in what's called the upper three dimensions, in a state of potential. Only when the prayer becomes audible, even if no one is around, you're just speaking out loud, it comes through your mouth, it reaches that level that the Kabbalists call Malchut, which manifests the energy. So for example, he said that as he was saying it out loud, he noticed that his own consciousness was changing just by hearing it. He noticed that he was more committed to what he was saying. He noticed that his desires were changing. So this is an example of a tool called audible prayer that is not convincing God to be different or the light to be different, but it's transforming you to be able to receive that light that's already there.
I love that. That to me, I mean, I guess if I had answered the question, I would have said it very tightly. David gave the beautiful metaphysical answer. I would say very, very succinctly, if all of our actions were pure and positive, we wouldn't need tools. The problem is that we're not always in alignment or in affinity with the light, and therefore we use the tools to replace the darkness that we consciously or unconsciously create with more light, right? Almost like I think about it like, they have now for wounds, they have like glue. Instead of stitches, they use glue. It happened to me, I stabbed myself, if I'm honest. I stabbed myself a number of years ago, and instead of having stitches in my hand, the doctor just glued my skin back together. So it's like filling the cracks that we created. I didn't mean to cut myself, right? Many times you stick your finger in the socket, you do things that you do things you know you shouldn't, but you can't help it in the moment, or you're so angry, or you're so feeling so low that you can't help it. And the Kabbalistic tools are really things that fill in the wounds that we create, the breaks in the flow of energy, so that we don't have to experience the ramifications of those disconnects.
Because at the end of the day, a powerful understanding is that there's nothing besides you and the Creator. And what will determine the revelation of the Creator in your life has to do with just your consciousness. So it's unfortunate that many of our moods, our feelings, what we consider to be a good day or a bad day, even the physicality in our lives that we either have or don't have, abundance or not, love or not, we think that has something to do with the outside world not accommodating me. All that has to do is with my consciousness. When my consciousness transforms, which is defined as the energy I put out into the world through my thoughts, words, and actions, when my consciousness changes, then my vessel changes, then my spiritual and physical changes, everything changes, the whole world changes. So it's very important, because a lot of times people walk through life waiting for something good to happen to them, when the good is waiting for them to change their consciousness.
That should be a bumper sticker. Stop waiting for good to come, start creating. Well, you could probably think of a nicer way to say it. I'm smiling as I'm listening to David, because I realize we just answered the second question without actually saying it out loud. The second question I thought would be great for us to answer is, how can we cleanse the negative karmic seeds from our past, like negative speech, gossiping, lying, exaggerating, etc.? So in a way, we just began that. The answer to that question is that there are obviously tools that can help intercept the boomerangs that we throw out there. But what would you add to that, David?
Maybe I'll add one and you can share. The first thing is, I think it's a very prevailing form of negativity, is the guilt and anxiety that we have about stuff we've done in the past. So we committed something that we may not be proud of, that we call a short circuit. Fine, we did that action. It happens all the time. In fact, sometimes it's forced to happen. But then where we really get caught up is thinking about what we did and dwelling on what we did and feeling bad and rehashing it.
Recreating it in our minds.
That's right. That's right. There's so many different types of negative emotions that then follow. And what most people don't realize is the negativity caused by the ensuing emotions is stronger and greater than that one negative action. So that means that if I could actually not have any guilt, any shame, any feelings of anxiety about what I did, I just stopped it right there, I would just be, I would only be responsible for that 2 seconds of what that negative action was, as opposed to 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years or 20 years of thinking about what I did, which creates further negativity. So we talk about this a lot. Therefore, the most powerful way to cleanse past mistakes is simply the decision to not make them anymore moving forward. And the decision has many levels, has actually 4 levels. The 4th level being the strongest form of a decision, which has the strongest cleansing. And it says that that strongest level of a decision is that even the Creator can look inside your heart and testify that you will not go back to that negative action. Because sometimes we commit to being different. Let's say a person commits to exercise and that they want to take care of themselves. So they make a sincere commitment. So what happens is the negativity of laziness from the past starts to become erased because now you're making a decision to be different. However, if the Creator looked inside your heart, maybe the Creator would see, and you could be honest with yourself and see it yourself, that, even though you're committing, you kind of know you might probably drop off in 3 to 6 months. You kind of know that you're the person.
Or you're doing it for someone else.
Or maybe you're doing it for somebody else, so the motivation has a limit. Or maybe you know that once you start traveling, you will stop. So there's a part of you that's not so resolute in your desire, as opposed to, for example, let's say past life you had killed someone. So it's a negative action. How do you cleanse murder? Then in this life, the commitment to never kill again actually cleanses past life's murder. So if I asked you right now, if I looked inside your heart, would I find a speck of a desire to murder? I probably wouldn't find it, right? Because that's not something that we actually struggle with, most of us. Most of us don't struggle with, I hope I don't kill somebody today. It's in our mind, it's like we don't even get close to that. Or certain things like, for example, the Bible talks about, the extreme of like incest, or things that are very like, in our culture, we're like, whoa, it's not even something we want to contemplate. It's not something people struggle with necessarily. That means that it's cleansed, because you don't have to struggle with it. If you still struggle with it, or there's a chance you will fall, it also means that you haven't fully cleansed the stuff from the past. So all of that was a roundabout way of saying, when you commit, and the deeper the commitment, the more the past is cleansed. And then, of course, you have to face the test again. The test comes back again in some shape or form for the final cleansing. And if you pass the test, then it erases the past.
It's really powerful. I think that a lot of the questions that we had were also focused on what you were just talking about, the idea of repetitive patterns, correcting things, what we call tikkun, the soul's transformation process. So I want to actually read verbatim one question, and all of the listeners who wrote in asking about identifying patterns or how do you identify your tikkun? This is the question that's going to cover all those other questions, but this one just has a specific example, so I think it's going to touch more points in everyone who's listening. Can you share advice or patterns on how to understand? Can you share advice on patterns and how to understand them or change them? For example, I'm dealing with a health issue that I dealt with 5 years ago. When I dealt with it 5 years ago, I was single and starting a new job. Fast forward to today, same story, single, just started a new job, and out of the blue, this health issue comes back. How do we understand what our soul needs or is trying to tell us when we recognize these patterns, and what do we do to get through them?
So the question is, she's experiencing the pattern of the health challenge, and it's coming back.
Well, there's also there's few things that are repetitive. It's not just the health challenge. It's that she's again newly single, again starting a new job, and whoop, here comes the health challenge again.
Yeah. It's important that we identify what it is inside of us, and really to want to know from the Creator what's being asked of us. I think that a lot of times people don't realize that they have these competing desires. So a competing desire that could cause a health challenge to come back, for example, would be maybe they have a desire to be healthy, which we all do, but maybe they also have a desire for other people to feel bad for them. So this desire for me to feel that other people feel bad for me, for whatever reason you get excited about that, or that brings you comfort and pleasure when people feel that you're the victim. Because being a victim also has a lot of energy. So we get addicted to victim consciousness. So if I have a desire, a subconscious desire to be a victim, I will draw, God forbid, a person will draw upon themselves situations to give them a reason to be a victim. And so this is one reason why chaotic situations, painful situations come back. Because there is a part of us that has become comfortable with the challenging situation. For example, maybe when a person is sick, they don't have to feel bad about achieving their goals.
You know, you just made me think. I remember many years ago, one of the teachers was sharing their own revelation about their healing process. And they said that when they went back to the beginning, when the challenge began, what they realized was that they were struggling with their choices they had made that they felt made life hard for them. Yeah. And becoming ill or whatever weakness they were experiencing allowed them to step back from working, to step back from putting in so much effort, gave them the excuse, and I'm not saying that to any of our listeners, it's a very subconscious process that he only realized 15, 20 years later. But the fact that the body then mirrors our consciousness is really where the work is that if we dig deep, we can understand there can often be a self-serving reason why we choose to replicate a scenario.
That's right. Exactly what you just said. I remember a long time ago in the earlier years of when I started teaching, I was asked to give a seminar somewhere and I didn't want to go. I felt nervous to speak in front of that type of a crowd. I didn't feel that I was ready or prepared. I was actually even upset that I was asked to go. And so, interestingly enough, I got sick a couple of days before. And so, I wrote to them and I said, look, I'm sick, I can't go. And so I realized how part of me felt relief. So that's an example of a subconscious part of me wanting to get sick so that I don't have to go to my next level and give this seminar. Now, some people would say, oh, well, maybe the Creator got you sick because you weren't meant to. You weren't meant to. And we have to be really careful with that logic. The Creator doesn't just do things. There's only us and the Creator, and the Creator can only be revealed based on our desire. So if the Creator is involving its energy, it's because we already presented a desire to draw that specific energy.
So many good questions.
That's really important.
It is important.
All of us at home kind of need to take a look at our lives and the parts of our lives that are moving slower than we would like, and manifestation is eluding us in some way, and kind of ask ourselves where we have the parking brake on, even though we're putting our foot on the gas. So there's this clash happening, and it's causing you to stay in neutral, or maybe just inching forward. Because I know a lot of people who work really hard.
Honestly, that hurt. I felt what you were just saying right now.
There's so many people who are working so hard, and they're not seeing the results and the fruits of their labor because there's a part of them that is also requesting not to receive those fruits. Right. We have to really kind of look at our lives.
So the next question pivots a little bit, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge off the top of my head, I saw at least 3 versions of this question. There may have been more even because I didn't get to reading all of them just yet. But first of all, obviously a lot of our listeners are struggling with loss. And I want to also acknowledge those of you who wrote in for us to talk a little bit more about that. The general question was around losing. I remember someone said they lost their mom. Another person said they missed their grandma. How Kabbalistically can we stay connected to loved ones who've passed on? And I want to start with, and David, I'm sure will chime in with his understandings, but there is one of the interesting things that Kabbalah teaches about this is that there's a timeline. And within the closer we are to that person's departure, the more recent it is, the easier it is to make contact and also to establish a communication system. The longer the process goes, and I'll explain it in a second, the longer, the further on the process that person is in their soul's journey, the more difficult it is to initiate and to maintain a connection. So the real work is recommended in that first year to make sure that you keep talking to that person, you dedicate actions of sharing for the elevation of their soul, you ask for their help, you do what you another really powerful practice is to practice recognizing how they communicate with you. Trying to identify, maybe there's a certain, I know it happened to me that when my teacher passed away, I noticed that whenever I was struggling with something, I like to take walks outside, helps me clear my head and open up to other possibilities, get out of that loop that I can get into. And I would keep seeing hummingbirds. And we don't have a lot of flowers. We have a lot of trees where we are, but not a lot of flowers. And it struck me that whenever I see that hummingbird, it's like my teacher saying, hold that thought. That's the thought you want to hold on to. So a student of mine who had lost someone very close to her, she said that things would fall, like her keys would fall off the counter or a book would fall off the shelf and she'd realize, okay, that's her loved one speaking to her. So it really is about developing a muscle as soon as one can after that person's departure from the physical reality to create that inroad, to create that communication system. And that window is usually the first 11 months, that it's really the more you communicate, the more communication you will have on through the years. Now, that doesn't mean that if it's past that 11-month period, you've missed a window of opportunity. I mean, David, what do you recommend when people ask how can they stay connected to loved ones who've passed?
You really hit the nail on the head in that everything comes down to your desire. And the Zohar goes deep into this idea that when a student of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, after he passed, and the student had such a yearning and a desire to see his teacher and be connected to his teacher, that this desire pierced through the veils of the upper world. And that's how he received this connection. And the sages are very clear about this. To the extent of your pure desire, your absolute desire, meaning that it's not a half-hearted desire. It's not I kind of want it, I would like to have it. It's full, it's there with your heart and soul. Anything is possible, even communicating with souls that have passed from this world. So if it were me and I wanted to really make that connection, I would first have to ask myself, how badly do I want that connection? That's the first question I would ask. How badly do I want it? How badly do I appreciate to have such a connection? Because there's an appreciation component there. And the third is, what do I need to do to have affinity with that soul? Because like attracts like. So I would take one of the most predominant spiritual principles that we learned in Kabbalah, which is affinity of form. You cannot have the light if you don't act like the light. So I'm going to apply that same logic to a soul. I can't have a connection to that soul if I don't act like that soul. So let's break it down into its components.
By the way, I think a lot of people can relate to what you just said, even outside of spirituality. There are a lot of people who say, when I'm in the kitchen and I'm cooking, I'm channeling my grandma. I feel my grandma close to me. Or, when I'm sailing like I used to do with whoever, that's when I feel they're closest to me. That there is even a physical connection there when you create that affinity.
Yeah, I don't want to trivialize it, but it's almost like creating a business plan, because you create a business plan of how to connect to someone who's left this world. The business plan is, all right, this person is a soul without the body consciousness. All right, well, what does that mean? What is body consciousness? Body consciousness is reactive consciousness. Body consciousness is when I'm sad. Body consciousness is when I'm into myself or into my thoughts or into my anxiety. Body consciousness is when I have doubts and fears. Okay, so what you were saying is this soul that's passed has none of those qualities because the body is no longer there. Well, how do I, to the extent that I emulate the soul, without the body consciousness, I have affinity of form. And then you add the things that Elisheva said, which are the things that they love to do. Or in our case, we read from the books of the sages. We read from the books and the writings.
About them.
And we tell stories about them. All of this creates the surrounding light, the energy that helps create a gateway to the loved one.
Very powerful. And by the way, this next question is even a little bit connected. Now I'm reading.
And to be clear, that sadness actually is what severs it.
Right.
And I know a lot of people that they think that by being sad and staying
Mourning. Like
in a state of mourning
dragging
is actually a
repellent.
It is a repellent, but they think it's a way to actually what's the word I'm looking for? Honor to the dead.
In some cultures it is, but spiritually speaking it's
not, right? But if you want to honor the dead, you should become happy. It seems ironic. But after the 7 days and 30-day period of actual mourning, it's about letting go of all sadness and moving on.
That's so true. So again, this is a piggybacking on that, the loved ones who've passed question. This question is about the Kabbalistic take on intuition. There are times where we can feel our intuition unmistakably. However, how do you recognize it in situations that are not very clear-cut? For example, let's say you have a strong feeling that you should extricate yourself from a situation. How do you know whether that feeling is your intuition bringing you to safety or your fear preventing you from facing something you need to face?
That's a great question. So let's break it down through a practical example. Let's say I have an intuition about something in the business world, a business decision. It can be anything. It can be about hiring. It can be about firing. It can be about pushing through on something with marketing. It could be pushing through on some kind of thing you need to spend. We're faced with business decisions pretty much all day long as we have careers. What I've learned is when intuition comes to me, I like to pull on that string. I think people are so caught up in, well, what's the end result going to be? What do I do or not do? I've seen many times, for example, an intuition might tell me, go to Las Vegas for an event or go to New York for an event. My logic will then come and say, but there's a lot of travel, but who's to say that it's going to work out? You've got to spend all this money. So you kind of have this back and forth and you say, well, I don't know what to do. In my case, I've learned as soon as my intuition comes, I will pursue it until the point that it really involves a massive sacrifice where I might lose something. So if my intuition tells me just to go to New York, I'll go. I'll just go. Because what do I really have to lose? Some money, some time. There must be a reason why this thought came to me, so I'll just go. And what's amazing is even if I went to New York for some business event and I was thinking that the positive outcome could be X, I'm often led in a completely different direction. And then I find out that I was meant to go there for a completely different reason. And that actually keeps you alive and fresh. And the light is flowing like a clean water river versus the swamp. People become swampish when they're so in their head and
it's been a long time since you used that metaphor.
I know, yeah. We're so in our head, we're so calculating, we become paralyzed, and we enter our comfort zone. This is why students of Kabbalah in their first 1 or 2 years see so many miracles, because they kind of just do things without, I don't want to say without thinking, but without overthinking. They try things, they test things. They're very childish about it, which is great. That's why children are generally
curious.
happy.
They're very curious.
They're very curious. And curiosity is very powerful to reveal new energies. And what I want to say for all of us is we need to ask ourselves, where are we set in our ways? Because we've created systems in our lives that on one hand protect us and make us feel comfortable, but then shut us off from receiving divine intuition, because the Creator will stop giving you prophecy and divine inspiration if we don't follow it. We're cutting ourselves off from it. So it's very important that we take risks on a daily basis to follow our intuition.
Okay, I hope we'll have time to...
You got one more question?
Yeah, one more. This is also a very specific situation, but I think it's super relevant, super applicable to all different people in different parts of their journey. What should I do if I feel my current career path isn't super impactful or helping other people a lot? I've overcome a lot and I feel like I have a lot of potential to help people with similar problems I went through, but right now this current path is the most financially stable.
That's a good one. Do you want to answer?
Well, it's funny, I remember many years ago working with someone who had a very lucrative, comfortable job and decided to step out of that. I think it was retail or retail management, and then move into getting their master's and going on and doing therapy. I mean, it was a beautiful trajectory. And I wonder sometimes in seeing people do that, and whoever wrote in with that question, you're not alone. A lot of people carve out a path for themselves and then realize it or feel at a certain point it might not serve them, it might not serve the world as they thought it would anymore. I really think that a big part of that realization or that understanding, what is it here to teach me, is it might not necessarily be you need a new career, right? That's one of the interesting things I think about the time that we live in, is that in order to be a force of good in the world, you don't need to be a monk or, become a life coach. There is I see for people who have that revelation that they don't realize they're meant to impact where they're at, not to leave where they're at and create a new journey of impact. By the way, this awakening in career, in this particular case, it happens to be that whoever wrote in feels like they can help people. There are a lot of people who wake up in the middle of a career and realize they don't love what they're doing, or it no longer resonates with them and they want to do something else. It's really, to me, the same journey, whether you want to change careers to help people or you want to change careers now because you want to put shoelace tips on shoes. Shoelaces on shoes.
Shoelace tips on?
You want to put tips on shoelaces, okay? That's what I meant to say. Yes. You want to cap, it's very ancient terminology. You want to cap toothpaste
From the Zohar?
tubes. Yes, the Zohar talks about it.
The Zohar talks about it?
So the idea is more of, have I maxed out? I think that if you want to make a big change, you really have to ask yourself, have you maximized your capacity to help others where you are already? Because what ends up happening is that if you pivot, you make a 180, it's great. It's definitely, many people should and will, but are you doing it reactively? That's what David said about body consciousness. Is there fear? Is there worry? Is there frustration? Is there anxiety? How do I know if I'm being guided to change for the right reasons? And that's why I always tell people, we could be talking about a relationship, by the way. Sometimes people wake up and they realize the relationship they're in is no longer resonates with them. It's no longer in alignment with them. Well, guess what? If you don't give that relationship 100%, if you don't give that job that you're in right now the maximum opportunity to allow you to express your potential to help others, you'll never know you'll always look back and wonder, should I have stayed there? Because there is something to be said about being financially able to do what you want to do, not only for a selfish reason, but also to be able to have the luxury to take the day off and help people and not worry about your paycheck or not worrying about paying the bills. So it's really about, we're in the physical reality for a reason. I think that's maybe the important thing to remember. We're not here to suffer. We're not here to, if we were, we would probably just walk around in potato sacks and eat gruel. We're really here to enjoy the physical reality, and there's nothing wrong with that. So if you can enjoy the comfortable job and be a force of kindness, of good, of sharing where you're at, you're getting the best of both worlds. And you may come to the conclusion, once you've tried that you do need a change. But the idea is to give 100% where you're at before you pivot.
I I had something to say, but actually I realized we should end with the consciousness of the next 2 weeks so that everyone can keep in mind that there is a universal energy coming down into this world that will stay with us for the next 2 to 3 weeks, where the light begins to destabilize parts of our lives that either need healing or shouldn't be there to begin with.
And it might have already started, by the way.
And not might. It most likely has already started. It really comes in from about 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
And what are we saying? We're saying that the energy is coming in somewhat uninvited because it needs to be revealed. And areas in our lives where we are settling for less, in careers, in relationships, in consciousness, will become destabilized, and you will feel that you're on shaky ground. You'll feel like all of a sudden issues are coming up in your marriage or your relationships that you didn't experience before. You'll see issues in your personal life. And what it's trying to do now is to just show us what parts of our lives need more attention, need more thoughtfulness, and need more spirituality. The Kabbalistic understanding of the 15th day of Aries.
Right, so Aries begins this Thursday.
Yeah.
If you're watching the show this week, it begins on Thursday.
And then the 15th day is one of the most powerful days of the whole year, because on that night, the night of the 15th, we experience this tremendous light. It's called the light of Keter, which breaks whatever addictions, fears, and negativity that we're holding on to inside of our soul. So that's the energy that comes in. The Kabbalists gave it the name of Passover or Pesach, and many people think that this is a holiday of and for the Jews. We always kind of reveal that this energy existed since the beginning of time and is available to everyone in the world who decides to connect to it. The Kabbalists did reveal to us that the way to draw that light and create a vessel for that light is through the technology of what's called the Seder, which is a multi-hour process that involves the technology of various foods that draw unique types of light that then we digest through consciousness and meditation to help us release different fears, anxiety, ego, the stuff that's keeping us small, the stuff that's keeping us limited, the stuff that's keeping us holding on to limited belief systems. So for all of you all around the world, if you can find a local Kabbalah Center.
We can put all the details on the Weekly Energy Boost homepage. So if people want to learn more, they can get the resources there as well.
Yes. So I want to just kind of make an extra push here that if and even if it just inspires a handful of people, try to look into coming into Los Angeles to be with us. This is the international Passover. People are flying in from all around the world. I think we'll have upwards of 800 people, maybe more. And it's in one of the most beautiful hotels and the most beautiful experiences with Michael and Monica Berg and various senior leadership teachers from all around the world. So just the energy in the room is palpable. And you really feel the light of the Creator physically in this world unlike any other day. And I would want our audience to experience that, make it into a retreat. And correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of like that whole week, we have lectures,
every day is
seminars,
a different opportunity to study, connect, participate.
For the 7 days after,
yes.
Right? So kind of look at it as a spiritual retreat. If you want to come and stay for a couple of days, come to Los Angeles. Obviously, who doesn't like Los Angeles? I don't know. I mean, even the people who leave, they don't really want to leave. So just throwing that out there to join us. And we'll probably speak more about it in our upcoming Weekly Energy Boost.
So Weekly Energy Boost is available on all podcast platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can visit us at weeklyenergyboost.com to look into our archives and see more information about what David was talking about, as well as anything else we think is important for our listeners to know. And you can also click the donate button there and support our podcast. But really the best way you can support us is by sharing this episode, liking, rating, and reviewing wherever you're listening. That helps us get in front of more people, reach more ears, and obviously inspire more growth and change in the world around us. Have a fabulous week, and we'll see you next time on the Weekly Energy Boost.